Okay, good afternoon and welcome to another 7 Minutes of Podcast with VSA Capital. And today I'm delighted to have Nick Bridgen, the CEO of Ferro Alloys, a vanadium company in Kazakhstan. Good afternoon, Nick.
And hello, Andrew. Ferro Alloy Resources, to give us our full name.
I apologise, it's the working from home, Nick. You know, we tend to skip over a few things. So, look, vanadium, Kazakhstan, not everything that naturally springs to the forefront, perhaps. But, I mean, I think you know I'm pretty excited about it. But why don't you just quickly explain what it is exactly you've got and why, actually, I personally get very excited about it.
Okay. Well, first of all, vanadium, not everybody's heard of it, but those that have know that it's quite an interesting metal in these times. I mean, it's essential for a huge number of different types of steel as an alloy of steel, and particularly construction steel. That's its bread and butter business, and that business is growing. But there's another interesting avenue, which is vanadium redox flow batteries, which could take up huge quantities of vanadium. So vanadium is an interesting metal. It has technology applications as well as plodding, reliable applications. What we're doing is we have a very large deposit, but what's interesting about us is that it's completely different from nearly all the other vanadium deposits in the world. Vanadium actually is in quite abundant supply in the world. There's a material called magnetite, which is a type of iron ore, which has quite a lot of vanadium in it, and that accounts for quite a large amount of the Earth's crust. So there's never going to run out of vanadium, but what it doesn't have is vanadium that can be easily and cheaply extracted in large quantities.
Nick, why don't I pick up on that point, Nick, because I think that is one of the keys to vanadium. I mean, in truth, in the UK market, we currently just really have Bushveld, don't we, in South Africa, that is a vanadium producer. But the key to vanadium, as you say, lots of it is producing it. And of course, the price, it did have this spike last year, which went up to sort of, into the 30s per pound, over $30 per pound for delivery into China. It's now right back down to sort of 6. So, I mean, first of all, what is the sort of price of production that you've got? Because I believe it's one of the lowest cost producers in the world.
Yes, well, exactly. Two aspects to what you said. First of all, our price. We estimate about 40% of the cost of the best of the rest. So we are far and away the lowest. We expect to be the lowest cost producer in the world, and that applies to both operating costs and capital costs. On the supply side, we can meet any price that there's ever been and make good money out of it, which can't be said of any other vanadium producer. Secondly, on the market, the reason for the extreme volatility is that the market is quite small, and there's quite a lot of production which is called co-production from people who are using magnetite to make steel, and they are about 70% of the world's supply of vanadium comes as a byproduct from making steel. And so when the vanadium price goes down, the supply doesn't go down as much as it needs to. So, and likewise, in fact, it's more interesting to look at it on the upside, in that for sort of 9 years out of 10, unfortunately, there's no periodicity about this, so you can't forecast it. But every now and again, when demand exceeds supply, the price goes through the roof, which is what happened recently. But that's the exception. One mustn't think that the price has come down. It's simply reverted to norm.
Well, yeah, that's very true, actually. And it's been absolutely flat now for about 6 months. So most people should have got used to that, if you see what I mean. But even so, you do, I know, have a very low cost. You've got a fantastic world-class asset, I think it's fair to say. Now, tell me about Kazakhstan, which is the other part. I mean, some people are happy there, some aren't. I know you spend a lot of time there. Obviously, also, it's very close to China, which must be very useful because China is one of the biggest consumers of vanadium.
Yeah, well, we are in many ways in an ideal location where we're on very good transport routes. We're on the twin motorway and rail connection between eventually East Coast China, which connects with Europe and Russia. And that motorway and the rail goes directly through our nearest town. And we have a road to that town already built. So we're in a very nice location. We're far from any habitation, but on the other hand, we've got all infrastructure near us. I mean, one of the other good things I didn't mention about the project is that we not only have this road system accessing the site, we also have a high voltage power line crossing the corner of our site. So all the big ticket infrastructure items are already there and don't need to be provided. And they, of course, can add up to more than half or sometimes 3/4 of the project costs.
So, I mean, obviously, and again, your business, though, actually, I mean, you've got obviously a big project which you would like to get going. You're actually sort of split into three, aren't you? You've got a little reprocessing plant which is functioning today, producing some vanadium. So you've got actually production, which is great. You've then got a sort of a pilot scheme for your main asset that you want to build up. And then, of course, there is the main asset itself. Do you want to just, it's sort of like three parts, isn't it?
Actually, two of those are really one and the same. We built a pilot plant, 15,000 tons a year, to test the process for the big operation, for the big project. And then we adapted that because it was a pilot plant. It was too small a scale to be profitable using our own ore. But we can buy in concentrates which contain more vanadium than our ore. And that plant, with a little adaptation, became profitable, or can be made profitable on its own. So we did that really because we wanted to keep the team together. We had, when we operated it for a year as a pilot plant, we had necessarily to create laboratories, management systems, really a sort of a whole mini organization, and that will be a wonderful stepping stone when we build the big project. That management, that experience, those laboratories, that everything means that we seamlessly move over to production instead of having to create an organization from new ab initio. We did it for two reasons. One, of course, the vanadium price was very high. It's not so high now. So it was going to make a lot of money. And secondly, a lot of what we're doing to this small plant now, we have to do anyway for the big project. So it's not dedicated costs, it's costs we'd incur anyway.
But again, it does differentiate you slightly from some of the junior exploration companies, which are just pure exploration. You know, you have actually got something producing, which is great. And I think that makes a much more interesting company.
No, and I should say vanadium chemistry and vanadium treatment is very complicated. It requires a lot of know-how. People describe it as a bit of a black box in that people don't always know exactly what reactions are going on inside processes. They only know the inputs and outputs. And there was a steep learning curve to go up, and we've gone up that learning curve. We've got specialists who now know more about vanadium processing than anyone in the world. So it's a great start.
Be careful, Nick. Rumour has it that I took a chemistry degree at university, so don't challenge me too much on that. But, I mean, that's an interesting point on the vanadium, because vanadium isn't absolutely simple. Like most of these battery materials, actually, none of them are that simple. But obviously we know that, you know, you mentioned that at the moment steel is the big driver for the vanadium demand. And of course, with China being locked down for so long, it has drifted off, but it should now be perking up. I would expect to see vanadium demand actually really picking up in China. But the other use, as you said, is in these vanadium redox flow batteries. And I think anybody who knows me knows that I'm a massive bull of them. But, you know, at the moment, we're talking about people renting the electrolyte, and in fact, Bushveld has a relationship with Invinity Energy Systems to provide this electrolyte. Is that something you'd like to get involved in?
Well, we almost certainly will, because the vanadium battery industry needs us. And as far as I can see, there's no other real game in town, in that the vanadium battery industry needs relatively low-cost vanadium. They don't really, they're not economic if the price of vanadium goes up to where it was last year. And so the battery industry needs a stable source that can produce vanadium at a price that doesn't kill their industry. Well, we are it. Now, Bushveld is probably the second lowest, they're probably the lowest today, but after we come on stream, they'll be the second lowest, because they've got a lot of legacy assets they've acquired at very low cost. but still they're treating magnetite. They're treating this material which is fundamentally expensive to treat. They have to pre-concentrate it to make a concentrate. Then they roast at something, I don't know exactly their process, but something like 1100 degrees. And then they have a leaching process rather similar to ours. And we don't have to do all that. So they will never get their costs any lower than it is today because of those steps. And it's very energy intensive. So yes, it works. They're a very good low cost producer, and they've got a lot of assets that they've acquired at low cost, as I said. But they're never going to be a very low cost producer like us. We can get down to, well, we project in our competent persons report $1.54 per pound.
I mean, that really is an amazing price because, and I've seen, obviously I've been following you when you were a private company as well, and I believe it to be true. And that really is basically the lowest you'll find anywhere in the world. So, I mean, it really should be pretty excited.
Absolutely. And we are what makes the battery industry viable. And moreover, we have the scale. We have a very large deposit. So, of course, we can produce into batteries and produce into steel at the same time. We don't have a choice. I don't have to make a choice.
Nick, we're coming up to the end of our time, but maybe one final question. Obviously, you it's been very tough since you IPO'd a year ago for a whole host of reasons. In truth, vanadium price came crashing down to where it is now. The Woodford fiasco really hurt small cap companies. We had a general election, a Brexit. Now we've got coronavirus, an oil price crash. You know, everything is coming. It's been quite a tough entrance for your first year on the stock market. But I mean, I think it would be fair to say, and I'm not asking you to put words that you can't say, obviously for regulatory reasons, but you've come to a level now where I certainly feel very excited about it, and I'm very keen that people should be looking to buy this company or the stock, not the whole company. I think you want to keep control of that. But there's a slight lack of liquidity. Have you been sort of keeping your head down a little bit, and now is the time to come out and talk a bit more? Because I saw the same with Bushveld, interesting enough, when they first got into vanadium. People were like, well, what's vanadium? But now they have huge liquidity. Can we build your liquidity, do you think, to the same level, get retail interested, get things moving?
Yes, I mean, there's a mismatch. I mean, our projected NPV in our competent person report was $2 billion, and the upfront capex is 100 million, and a good chunk of that can be from debt and from streaming and royalty sales. So actually, the future dilution is very, very small for us. And then phase 2 can be funded entirely from phase 1. So really, we've got very little dilution and a huge NPV to capitalize on in the future. So there's a mismatch. Our current market cap is tiny, and I think the market has reacted to all that bad news that you've just explained and doesn't really understand it. And our job is to get that news out there. And I think there'll be one very big trigger, and that is that we've already done a feasibility study on a local basis. We're upgrading it now onto a Western bankable basis. And at that point, then that difference between our market cap and that $2 billion of NPV is going to stare everybody in the face, and suddenly it's going to look very exciting.
I mean, I must wrap it up now, but I mean, it's interesting that you say this about royalties and things and streaming, because actually, of course, the other major producer of vanadium that's listed in the TSX is Largo Resources, and they had a big offtake with Glencore that finished not so long ago, and it wouldn't surprise me, particularly with what's happening in the battery space, that maybe some of these big traders actually do come knocking on your door because you're an asset they can't ignore. I mean, do you, without saying anything you shouldn't, Nick, but, do you think there's a possibility that a big trader or someone like that will come and knock on your door?
Yes, I mean, we've everybody that we've ever talked to is interested. And a lot of people are holding on for the Western bankable. A lot of people are reacting to the dismal state of the world. But yes, I think things could change pretty rapidly.
Nick, it's been really good to talk to you this afternoon. As you can, and anybody listening can gather, I'm a big bull of what's going on vanadium, and I wish you well. And I'm sure that from here on in, there's only one way for your share price, and that's up.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nick.
Bye-bye then.